So this month in April, I wanted to play a little bit with all of the energies that are happening globally and spiritually at this time. So even though unity is founded in Christianity and of course the Lenten season and Easter, we're in this really beautiful spiritual crockpot, with all these other spiritual traditions that are celebrating this time as well. So we have, of course, Ramadan. We had recently Passover. But there's a lot happening in this time where we're looking at how we need to move into the newness, how we need to shed skin, how we need to let go, how we need to step forward into our power, into our belief, as that song says, how we need to move into this new time. We're coming into a new time in many ways. We've been 2 years in whatever this is, and we're moving out of it, maybe, whatever this is. But we know that we are in this newness, and that no matter what different authorities or things say, we know that all of us are different now, are we not? We're different, and sometimes we can't put our fingers on the what or the how, but we know things have changed. And so now is the time where we get to step into that. We step into that newness and claim whatever it is and really search in the recesses of our soul to understand what is mine to do now. And so the series this month is called Triumph of the Spirit. How do we move into that time of triumph? Last week we talked about living in victory, and that is available on YouTube or on Facebook. But today we're going to be talking about living in audacity, stepping out, letting go of fear, letting go of negative thinking, stepping into yourself, into your body, into your wisdom to be who you were meant to be in this iteration of life. Going big, going bold, and going home, the internal home that we are, that connection to spirit, daring to be. So now Easter, happy Easter again to everyone. But Easter is this wonderful time. We had a series of activities here over the course of this week. Who was here for Holy Thursday? Yes, we had communion, a beautiful facilitated service by a number of folks here. We had a drumming circle yesterday to celebrate Holy Saturday. Who was there? Yeah. And we also had an online service that we participated in on Friday. All of these things, in some senses, they're contrasts, right? Where we're moving from that Holy Thursday, that Good Friday crucifixion experience to today, the resurrection, the joy, the upliftment, right? But life is very much like that, is it not? We're going through these ebbs and flows. We're going through these times where things may not seem like they're going right, and yet they are. Have you ever been in your life where you've been at a low point, something has happened, a divorce, a loss of a job, some kind of deep loss, and yet you've moved out of it and realized that something came out of that? You didn't know at that moment why you were being taken to that low, and yet once the Spirit allowed for time and distance and reflection and wisdom, you saw that. Like, ooh, he wasn't good enough for you, girl. Right? Yeah. You didn't see that then. You were heartbroken, but all of it made sense in the rearview mirror. All of it made sense. And so here we are understanding the Easter experience, right, as part of this whole way in which we understand life, where we are on the cross, hurting, in pain, not understanding, not knowing, and knowing that it feels like we're dying this death. We're dying inside sometimes. Anybody ever been there? And yet, then you move through that experience. One of my old churches, the minister who I never got to meet, he passed away before I started there, but he would say something, the congregants always repeated what he said. And he would say, we want to live in this crucifixion all the time. We want to, mea culpa, mea culpa. Some of us come from spiritual traditions where we were told that that was the way that you experienced the Spirit. And so he would always say, get off the cross, y'all, because Jesus already got that spot, Or what I'd like to say, get off the cross because we need it for the burning bowl or the fire pit. But yes, so we move through today understanding that the resurrection, the core message is about this magnificent transformation. That's the core message that we come away with Easter. And as Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, would say, that Easter is about the awakening and raising to spiritual consciousness of the mortal mind. That is about the real story of our life. Now, to help us understand this idea that I want to talk about today, this idea of audacious living, we have no one else to really look at. We can look right at what Easter is about, looking at the life of Jesus. We know that his entire life, what we know of it from the Bible, it's really like a parable in and of itself, his whole life. Jesus was audacious. Think about that word for just a moment, audacious. The dictionary says that audacious means daring and bold and fearless and courageous, spirited, unintimidated. Was Jesus all those things? Yes. Jesus was willing to think outside the box, but more than that, he was willing to act outside the box. He wasn't confined to the boundaries of the day. When we also think about additional meanings of the word audacious, it means contemptuous of law or religion or decorum. That was Jesus too. He actively challenged or reinterpreted the laws of the day. He healed on the Sabbath. He walked on water. He raised Lazarus. He turned over the tables of the money changers. So Jesus was always pushing that envelope. He wasn't afraid of any pain or death or people's opinions. And if there was fear, of course, he took it on as a human part, but then transformed it, moved on from it. Audacity. How do we understand that in our own lives? I'm going to start with a little kind of maybe weird way to enter into this. But those of y'all who know me know that I go all the way to Mexico to come back to Kentucky. So this is what we're doing this morning. When I was in 7th grade, I had a teacher. And ironically, his name was Mr. Christ, but we used to tease him and call him Mr. Christ. And he was a 7th grade teacher that was really interesting. I grew up in the south side of Chicago, as many of you know, and I went to a school that was right across the street from the public housing projects that I grew up in. And he was a really funny guy because he was always trying to sort of teach us different things, right? But one of the things that he was known for was when he would have explosive anger when he felt like we weren't following his teachings. And one of his favorite sayings, actually the saying of his, was when he would get mad, he would have a phrase. And so one time, I had really long hair. I would sit on my hair, it was that long. And so one time I sat on my chair and this boy went behind me and tied my hair to my chair so that when I tried to get up, of course, that was a hot mess. And so there was all this debacle in the classroom, and so he gets up and he's like, "You have the nerve and audacity." And he would do it just like that every time. And you knew he meant business when he said that. Now, he used that kind of as a negative connotation when he would talk to us. The nerve and audacity. Okay, maybe he didn't talk like that, but that's my mind's eye. I see it that way. But he did that, and at the same time, he instilled in us The idea of the nerve and audacity also being a positive thing, about challenging, about envisioning, about opening up to something new. He would bring in the Saks Fifth Avenue catalogs and one of the other stores, I can't remember from the back in the day, that had these beautiful catalogs. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Where they would have all these luxury items in them. And there, the Neiman Marcus catalog, right. So he did, needless markup. And so he would bring them in and he would pass them around. It was like I don't know if you got a monthly or, he would pass them around. And part of it, I think, in his mind was to expose us, to have us to think about a world that was outside of the confines of what we were growing up in and what we knew. And so though I don't necessarily think it was all the materialness that he wanted us to sort of, be this or you should want this, but it was part of exposure about opening us up to this idea that there was something else. There was something more than what we thought. He was pushing us to vision an audacious life. For me, growing up, there was one time of the year where I always knew that that would happen, where I would feel that deeply, and that was at Easter. At Easter, guess what would happen? I would go to the mall with my mom. I don't even know if they had malls then. I'm dating myself, oops. We would go out and we would buy, we would go to Sears. That's where we'd go. We would go to Sears. And I would get a new outfit. That was the one time of year that I knew I was getting a new outfit. And not just a new outfit, I was getting new shoes, and I was getting a purse to match. And it was always either white patent leather or black patent leather, because I needed my patent leather. And so that was this time for me that was so wonderful and beautiful that I knew that it was taking us out of this cycle. Again, when you're growing up poor, you have the basics. You got your school shoes, and maybe you got some church shoes, and maybe, your gym shoes, right, for school, and that's it. So to have a new pair of shoes and a new outfit, that was a big deal. And I'm adding to that the fact that when I was a little girl, I was heavily overweight. I was an obese child. And so that was before the days where there was, Torrid and Lane Bryant and all of the stores. Now, as a plus-size woman or even as a plus-size child, you can have options, but back then you didn't. So for me to have an opportunity to be able to be in something that felt good to me, that I could out-picture into the world, made a huge difference. It sounds kind of silly when we're talking about clothes, maybe, on Easter, but at the same time, it's not. If we look at the idea of clothing in the Bible, it is everywhere. Too many references and opportunities to talk about here today. But clothing in the Bible and in the resurrection story itself signals something. It's signaling to us a change in consciousness, a change in situation. When you're changing clothes, when you're taking off the clothes, when someone touched Jesus' garment, there was something in the power of that. I stand here before you and I have this, right? And some people may think, it's really audacious. And it is. But many of us have fought our way to that image. Many of us daily have to fight our way to feel in our bodies and to feel good about ourselves and to feel good about how we look. We all do it different ways, and maybe it's not your body and maybe it's not your physical appearance, but the idea of the clothing is more than just the clothes. It's about how we change our mind, how we move in the world and do things differently so that we feel not just good, but we feel connected to the source of our being, that we are sourced and resourced deeply, and that we know who we are. That is clothes in the Bible. And I want to talk just a quick minute and flag one particular fun passage that I think we need to talk about. And it's not fun in its description, perhaps, or the context, but it gives us some illumination. And this is from John 19, verse 23, starting at. And this is when the soldiers had crucified Jesus, and they were looking at his clothes. When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, one for each soldier. They took his tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from the top. So they said to one another, "Let's not tear it, but cast lots for it to see who will get it." Now what's happening there? You know, oftentimes we're given the picture that Jesus was poor, that he was a carpenter, that all of this stuff, again, where it's sort of this idea of playing small. We're given this picture of Jesus, and that is not, if we look biblically at the references, he was wearing magnificent clothes. Why would they want to cast lots for his clothes if he was in rags, if he had given up everything? In addition, he had a tunic that was made of one piece of material. In those times, and hey, even in my time, you cobbled together clothes from different patterns, right? You patched them up. Maybe it came from your older sister or older brother, but it was one piece made from the top. In Unity, we look at not just the metaphors that are in the Bible, but the metaphysics. That means beyond the words. And if we look at the signaling of what's happening in there, it's telling us that his clothes represented the one tunic, the one piece. It is the unity of the self. And it's also the tunic made from the top, meaning it's from the above, from the higher vision, from the higher self, from the connection of all that is and all that is around us, all that was and all that has been and will be. All of this is in these little phrasings if we just dig a little deeper. Many of us are like, I don't get it. Bible's boring. Maybe at some level it is, but we're digging a little bit here to understand this is a blueprint for us to understand our life. It's not just some little story that we're told about the past. If we look at further in the resurrection, in the last, before that even, Jesus takes off his garments. It says he takes off his garments before he goes to wash the feet of the disciples. Again, this idea of taking off something, losing the limitation, taking off and shedding skin, taking off these limiting beliefs, renewing the mind. And in the resurrection, every one of the Gospels talks about the clothes in the resurrection. Matthew 28:3, his appearance was like lightning and his clothing white as snow. Mark 16:5, as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe. John 20:11, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over and looked into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white. And my favorite from Luke 24:2, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. Suddenly, 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. Clothes, signaling divine connection. But it's also about this idea of clothing yourself in newness, in spiritual newness, putting on the Christ consciousness, putting on that Christ self, allowing for that shiny newness to come through, spiritual clothing. And I just want to close with a quote as we move into the final phases of our service here today. But before that quote, I just want to ask each and every one of you, where must you step into your nerve and audacity? Are you living a life in audacity? And how can you embrace that idea of audacious living, because we are all here to be greater than we think that we are. The crucifixion represents our dying to old ways and beliefs and dying to those small selves. The resurrection represents our new way of being, a new life, knowing that at the center of us is light that cannot be extinguished, no matter who, no matter what. And I'd like you to just hold this quote and really allow yourself to hear what this says. Allow yourself to feel deeply the words. This is one of my, if not my favorite quote, and it comes from Marianne Williamson from Return to Love. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, well, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Well, actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God, and your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. You are all meant to shine as children do. You were born to make manifest the glory of God within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone here. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Go forth in audacity.